Dr. Jazz.
Yeah, man, I'll just jump in. Thanks for sending me the album. First of all, Truth 3.
Yes.
I know the first one, two ones. So when you sent it to me, I didn't know what the album was gonna be, and I was like, oh shit, you're continuing to work with the trio. So, and it's like a step forward. It's like the you guys have developed quite a story, right? I mean, what's the story behind this trio? I know you and Asaf worked with Mark Wingfield like a long time ago already, but
Yeah, I mean, the story is basically Leonardo Pavkovic, who runs Moonjun Records.
yeah,
He brought, Asaf and me together in 2016, I think. So it's almost been 10 years now. And at some point, Leonardo, because Leonardo is also the booking agent for Stickman, so he was on the road with us, and he said, Marcus, you're just such a shredder and such a great guitar player. He said, like, but there's no album in your catalog that actually shows that.
mm,
And that's when he organized the Truth sessions, the original one in 2019, I think it
yeah,
was, for us. And yeah, it was just liberating for me to be able to play freely, but also in some sort of more simple harmonic context. I
mm-hmm,
mean, it's not entirely true because there are a lot of kind of like, say, exotic scales in this. But Fabio Trentini is one of the most musical people I know.
mm,
And so he plays these beautiful bass lines, melodic and like very, very catchy. And I think that's really what this album, but also the whole project is about, is to have something like a catchy foundation, which is just the bass and drums and guitar improvising around that.
yeah,
And so this is like the third installment of that, where the first installment was like the freshest for me. I like it a lot. Second one was more dark because it was like the very first project I initiated during the COVID times. And now this one is sort of like a liberation from the past, even, let's say. We
mm.
take the same format, the same idea, but we play shorter pieces. Yeah, that's what that album is. And it's the theme is because of the three,
Yeah.
it's like the heart emoji. And so it's has a little bit of a theme of love and peace and understanding about it.
Which the music doesn't sound like that. So I mean,
Well, with the exception of Love Theme, which is the one
okay, yeah, yeah,
in
okay, but
F major, or and
otherwise it's quite dark. I mean, it's like really you guys dig into it. I mean, I like it. For me, my taste. That's my taste of music. I mean,
yes, yes. Like the idea of this is that we can also do really outrageous stuff and make it sound, I mean, yes, dark, but also
yeah, yeah.
light-footed,
No, no, it's very listenable. I mean,
Yeah.
in a positive sense. I mean,
There are a couple tracks where like we all three play in different time signatures, but it still grooves like, and you wouldn't really like notice it as something technical, let's say.
yeah,
And yeah, and for me as a lead player, I was always interested in playing melodically, right? But not melodically in the way that other people play, and especially also not in terms of like jazz cliches, let's say.
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
So that's what I've been working towards with my personal practice, to develop a sort of like tonal language and also like a phrase language, let's say, that is unique to me.
how
And I
did you do that? What was your process there, or it still is? I mean,
the process is very, very time consuming. That when I practice, I never practice music. That's the idea. So
mm,
I never practice any phrases or anything. When I'm practicing, I'm only practicing sort of technical or permutational exercises that always open up the whole space without focusing on one of those permutations more than others. and it's very time consuming because like you would get much quicker results working with a very specific material.
Mm,
But for me, because I never had any pressure really to be successful, let's say, I was just, and also my brain works like that. I can just do my thing with it, and everybody else can say, "Oh, what you're practicing is doesn't make sense," blah blah. No, it made sense for me. And so now I have like this total freedom to pick any note at any time, and also with any finger, like with the
mm,
touch instrument.
that's
That
important.
that is like the main. Yeah, that's very important. I mean, for us guitar players, it's important. With the touch guitar, it's even one step beyond that because there is no such thing as a position, because you always have to move to the next note somehow,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? And so. Yeah, I mean, like that process or that journey I went on over 30 years ago, it's still continuing, and I can see in project, especially in projects like Truth, where like like the practice takes me, because
Mm,
in the practice itself, I cannot really. It's very difficult to see the results within that. So it always has to be some sort of application, and yeah, and I'm really happy with the True Story album.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it definitely. I mean, when I listen to your voice, you've achieved originality, that's for sure. I
Hmm.
mean, as a guitar player,
Yes.
already having the touch guitar, I mean, that's like contributes. But still, like, I think nowadays there's so many. We talked about that the other day. I think like there's so many guitarists who are technically amazing, but sound quite alike. Like
Yeah,
many
exactly.
clones, and it's hard to achieve originality, I think. So
Yeah.
it's
And I
how it
think
is.
that's the funny thing because like I think that we, or like not you and I, but people use the term technical in a wrong way.
Yeah.
I think that the real technical players are those like Bill Frisell,
Oh man,
right? You know what I
absolutely,
mean? Right?
absolutely,
He's one of the most amazing players, but he
absolutely.
plays like nobody would look at his hand and say he's technical
Yep.
or sounds technical. But
Yep.
what he does is incredibly difficult, and that's sort of like what I'm doing. And like the feedback I'm getting from people when they see me play, they say, "Oh, like either like we can't even see your fingers move," or blah blah blah, or "Oh, it looks so easy," and blah blah blah. And yeah, but it's not, in fact,
Yeah. Yeah.
So. And especially when it comes to composing in the moment, which, is like good improvisation should be that really. I mean, I hope you agree with that.
Absolutely.
Uh, it's really you need to just be able to have a certain freedom navigating the instrument that is really hard to achieve.
Yeah. You have to know your instrument like 120%, like inside out. Just that
Yes.
you're really that you don't have to, that you just focus on the moment. Yeah.
It's
On the
also, I think
music.
it's
So
also away from the instrument. It's not just the instrument itself, it's also like the more conceptual or abstract knowledge about music and life
absolutely. Yeah.
that plays a big role and
Exactly.
somehow finds its way into the voice, as you call it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's what you said about the technique. I agree so much. Like David Gilmour of Pink Floyd. Man, people don't say, but he has, he's not Steve Vai, but for me, like, and him and Frizzell, the best techniques ever, just to get those bends going on. Or, when a Frizzell plays like a G chord or an E minor basic chord, it's like, damn, you played at home, it sounds like a E minor chord. With him, it's like magic, It's so,
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
it's, yeah,
And that's really what happens when culturally something like magic is really I think it's probably because of YouTube, but what we're doing here, like that people sort of like think that you can just attain anything simply by watching a tutorial or
hmm
having one class about it. But the fact that everything is so process based in the arts, and it's really and that's the difference, I guess, of what you were saying about that E minor chord that Bill plays versus, somebody else playing that E
yeah,
minor chord. I think that music teaching and arts teaching kind of like should have a comeback in the sense of teaching magic. You know,
Mm.
it should be something like teaching magic. And I know that there are a lot of people who think this way. And
No, no, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I'm just talking kind of about the majority. It's like, but then we're again at this point of originality, like it's hard nowadays, I think, as a guitar player, speaking of guitarists, like, the generation of Frizzell, Abercrombie, Metheny, Schofield, all these guys, Mike Stern, you recognize Scott Henderson, they play three notes and it's like, oh shit. And they sounded like that in the beginning already, when you listen to the first notes by Metheny, like in the mid 70s, it's like, wow, he was there. And then nowadays it's hard, I think it's for the young people. But like by achieving, like what you said, finding your own language and stuff, that's the path. Or through composition, I mean, that's another aspect which is so important, I think.
I think I think I agree, but also like we should, if we find different words, like you say, it's hard, right? I wouldn't say it that way. I think the the motivating thing to say would be you got to find your own thing,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And there are still a lot of things that you can do that are your own. And
absolutely.
even if it's something ridiculous, just like playing all possible combinations of fingers that make a chord, like on a 4x4, for example, right? I
Yeah,
know a guy who did that,
yeah,
right? Like 576 or whatever it is, can't remember,
yeah,
chords,
yeah, absolutely.
but it's really interesting to pick one of those things, and then that will find its way into how you move. And from how you move, it finds its way into your habits and your licks and stuff.
Yeah,
So if people are listening always to the same stuff, then it's hard to break out of that. So
yeah,
that's why you need to develop some sort of exercise, or let's say discipline, to practice things that you composed that sound like you, and
yeah.
then from there you can find something. So I think it's hard, but it's not impossible.
No, no, absolutely. No, no, absolutely not. Yeah, yeah. But it's a lot of dedication, like you said, it's a process, and you have to invest many hours, and which is a nice thing, I love practicing, I guess, like you do as well. I love to when I have time just to sit and play, just and it's a nice thing that you still love the instrument. That's one thing that is important, I think, that you really love this and love doing it, and
The interesting thing, and this is something that people don't believe me, I do not enjoy playing. Yeah. And it's just like maybe the words are, I'm choosing the wrong words, but what I mean by that is it's not something I do for enjoyment. Yeah. So the
yeah,
purpose is not to enjoy myself. Right? This is interesting. Or let's say the physical playing is not what I enjoy. I enjoy the music that
yeah,
comes.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
And I mean, that's what I was wondering about you. Like I said, with the Eric Dolphy record, for
Yeah.
example, where it's such a physical effort. Like, do you do you actually enjoy that?
That's a good
You do, right?
question. I think I do actually, but yeah, it's a good question actually. Yeah, it's a workout sometimes, but yeah, absolutely. Marcus, I wanted to ask you this the other day already, but like, why the touch guitar? I mean, it's quite a peculiar instrument, and I
Yeah.
mean, I guess you've answered this question many times, but I don't know it.
No, I mean, the why is really, I just got really fascinated by the idea of accessing the notes on the fretboard with eight fingers.
Hmm, okay.
Because and back then, like I already knew where I could be in. Back then I didn't understand how to really integrate both hands, both sides, like talking about the brain and the hands and like the nervous system, how to bring this together as one instrument, right? And it took me a long time to discover how to do it. Um, but I was just fascinated by that idea. And also like the it's so much more satisfying than playing any keyboard instrument because you have a finger on a string, right? And actually, you don't have a picking hand interfering with that contact.
Yep.
So it's a very direct thing, which is like in expressive terms, it's limited, is more limited than playing regular guitar with a picking hand, right? Or
Yep.
strumming hand or whatever. But it has this immediacy about it, which I absolutely loved, like already the concept of it. And in the 80s, I heard some, or late 80s, or even early 90s, yeah, very early 90s, I heard some King Crimson, and I was always like a fan of Tony Levin's bass playing and knowing that he played the stick, but not really knowing which pieces used the stick and blah, blah, blah. And so I was at a guitar craft course with Robert Fripp in 91.
Okay.
And I had a personal meeting with Robert, and it was like a 15-minute meeting, maybe 20 at the most. And I asked him about the stick, and he said, "Yeah, it's a cool thing. Tony plays it, and you know that he is very interested also in learning it, but he felt he was too old to start it. He was in his early 40s at the time, and so that kind of like confirmed to me that I should try it. And so I contacted Trey Gunn, and Trey Gunn had a spare stick available that he sold to me for $1,000. And I got that in I think at Christmas of 1992 or something. And then I started. And when I first picked up the instrument, it was a real shock because like anything that you could imagine about it was wrong. Like didn't work the way that I thought it would work. And so I remember that in the first couple of weeks, I really needed to make up my mind. Do I really want to do that, or do I just and I knew that if I want to do it, I have to really commit to it, and that's what I did. And so then starting in the first, even in like from the very beginning, I started trying to understand, trying to analyze, like to see how do I even play this, right? And at that point, nobody has ever at that well, and even now, not many people are
Not
really
many, yeah. Yeah.
are really, I mean, playing it well, that's one thing, but also people are not really interested in even trying to understand how it works, unfortunately, right? And so for me, I went from the Chapman stick to the war guitar, and then the war guitar, I had the idea. I mean, there was another meeting with Fripp I had in 2006 at a festival, and he interviewed me about, you know, what do you do, Markus, and blah, blah, blah. And you're one of the few of my guitar craft students who became a professional musician. How do you do it? Blah. And I explained it to him. And in that conversation, I realized that most of what I was doing at that point was sort of an idealistic nature, like art, music, CDs at that point, right? Stuff like that. And I got inspired by that conversation to actually see if there's anything that I know that I could kind of like put into physical form. And that was the inspiration to actually start building and designing, let's say, or thinking up that my own touch instrument. And it looks very much like you could say like another touch instrument or like even like the war guitar, because I mean, like it's the same thing. It's a guitar instrument with 8 strings, or you know, so you would say, okay, there can't be much of a difference. But with these instruments, as we all know as guitar players, like the details make the difference.
Yeah, to make it completely
Yes.
for you, yeah.
Yeah, and so even the way, if you pick up like one of my instruments versus a war guitar, for example, it's like day and night for a player, right? Like if you pick it up, or even for somebody who's not playing yet, you pick it up and you get an intuitive sense, oh, this is a different beast, right? And same with the stick, completely different beast.
Interesting.
Even though like the technique that I've developed for myself and that I'm teaching to people works on all touch instruments. So that's a good thing. So it's not that kind of like finding a new instrument also kind of like restricted the technique or the application of the technique. So that's a very good thing. Yeah. And I keep researching, I keep practicing, I keep teaching, and like we research as a group. So everything is always being tested by more than one person.
That's important, yeah.
Yes. And I mean, you get to do that in your school. That's great. You know, if you have an ongoing school, you can try out new concepts.
Yep.
And I do that with my courses and my online teaching.
Mm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. It sounds different. I like that. I mean, I always like the different, so that's why I like what you do. You know.
The cool thing is that for me, the challenge was at the first time to be able to sort of um, do something that is traditional. So to not just play something that's idiomatic, because
Yeah.
that's easy. You can pick up any instrument and mostly any instrument, and there's something easy that you can do that is idiomatic to the instrument,
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
So, and that's actually one of the problems, I think, of the Chapman stick originally, that it's so easy to do something cool quickly, but then if you want to go further, it's almost impossible, right?
Yeah.
So for me, the idea was, so how can I really, really just play the most basic thing and have the most basic understanding of what's going on so that I can play the simple folk tunes and things like that, right? So that then eventually, like from the knowledge of the most basic knowledge, you can then expand into things that are idiomatic plus, let's say, where it's not just idiomatic, but where it goes, where
Beyond. Yeah.
like where tradition and innovation meet, let's say.
Yep. Yep.
That's always been important to me because I think that's where my favorite music exists in that space, where people have very grounded like sound,
Yep.
but at the same time they have the vision, let's say, to create something out of the ordinary.
Yeah. That's all the greats. Yeah. I mean,
Yes,
they had that. Still have them. I mean, yeah.
yes,
I wanted to. I wanted to ask you about Tony Levin. I know you guys are going on tour like in a couple of days, right? With
yes.
the Stickman project, and uh, we saved that from the other day for today. Like, but how did the call happen? Like, I told you the other day already. Like, Tony, for me, like, obviously, I'm a huge Peter Gabriel fan, and every time I saw him on stage, and it's like he's such a cool dude. Like, what was? How did he find out about you, and how did you get the call and the Tony story?
Yeah, it's relatively simple. Yeah, it really is because I was already working with Pat Mastelotto at the time.
Oh, and how did you? Okay, then let's go back because yeah, Pat, obviously King Crimson connection. Like, how does that go?
So in the early 2000s, Tony Levin was not in King Crimson. So it was a quartet with Adrian Blue, Robert Fripp, Pat Mastelotto, and Trey Gunn. And I saw them a few times in that time, like I think three times on the 2000 tour and once on the 2003 tour. So on the 2000 tour, I was in Munich working on my record called The Longest in Terms of Being. It was an ambient record with a friend. And we worked over the weekend. And I remember on the Sunday night, there was a King Crimson show at Circus Krone, it's called.
Hmm.
And we went there, and after the show, because as you know, I mean, I had never really met Trey in person much, but at that point, like we already had met once maybe or something. And I met him at the side of the stage and said hi, and Pat was there and waved. And but we really didn't know each other. And now the funny thing is, like the next morning, I'm taking the train up to northern Germany, where I was living at that point. And I actually met Trey and Pat on that train.
Oh wow, that was
Yeah. Because didn't want to take the nightliner that night, So they stayed over in a hotel and then took the train in the morning. And I was on the same train, and that was completely unplanned. We met there. We sat in the same, how do you say, compartment,
yeah, yeah,
or what do we call it? And I mean, I wasn't talking much with Trey then, but Pat and we just kind of like, hit it off. And I remember he gave me his Mastica, which was one of his project record, and I gave him the record I had done with Ian Body, Distant Rituals,
hmm
and we became friends. We became friends. I started helping him with his website at that point. I think for about 5 years, I was helping him. I was
Oh
the
really? Oh
master.
wow, amazing.
Yes. And I remember in early 2005, so 20 years ago, he called me and he said, I'm part of this new website thing called e-sessions, which is, you know, like you have like a webcam and you have a Pro Tools rig and you can have a client at a distance, you know, doing a session with you for their music. And he said, so, and this lady, Gina, she, I think Gina was her name, she installed Pro Tools in my house, and so I can record. So why don't you come over and we make a record?
Mm.
So that was the call. That was the
Wow.
first.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I came over. I was in Austin, Texas, and we recorded the first album under the name Tuner. And Tuner, again, already that name, Tuner, was the result of Pat and Trey working together as two, like not TWO, but TU.
Yeah.
And so my idea was, okay, let's just add to that legacy already of those duos. So there was two Tuner, and now we have the trio Tuner with Pat, Trey, and I, right? So anyway, that was the beginning of working with Pat, and we did
Interesting.
a couple live records. We did 3 albums together, studio albums as Tuner, and we also produced albums together. We had a couple of we worked with Christabel. She was one of the actresses in Twin Peaks, The Return, and with Tova, an artist from Berlin here, and we did some like really big productions. Was really
Wow.
with David Bottrell mixing, and
Wow.
so really great stuff. That was also my introduction into production and becoming a producer. Pat kind of
Interesting.
he showed me everything, you know, really. And that was so that went on for like 5 years. But, and this is interesting to know because you asked about Tony and Stickman, right? So Stickman, there was an album called Stickman that Tony did in 2006 or 7, I think. I can't remember exactly. And I was at Pat's studio even when Pat was recording his drums for that project. So it's funny, like I was there in the process of this creation of that music, even before the band was there, and even before Tony knew anything about me. Right?
Interesting.
So it's funny, like from the very beginning of the birth of that project, I was there. But then they had Michael Bernier as the first stick player in the band because he would live locally where Tony lived at the time, and that lasted for like a year and a half or so or two. And then Michael left the band, and it was I think August. Yeah, it was August 2005. No, 2010. Sorry. That Pat sent me an email on a Thursday night. I remember that now. Thursday night asking me if I wanted to join the band because a year earlier I had said to Pat that I want to tour more. Or I would
Okay.
actually tour because I had never really toured at that time. And I was already 38 years old, right? So it took me, I really had to sleep on it because I was not the biggest fan of the band, of the Stickman band in that configuration. It was just a little bit too goofy for me,
Mm-hmm.
the approach they had, because I'm a serious guy, you know. Yeah. No, it really didn't fit with my
No, I know what you mean. Yeah,
Europeanness,
yeah,
you know,
yeah, yeah,
like European, like what I wanted to. But then, like Tony wrote, and actually Pat wrote to me, like they wanted to be heavier, they wanted to be more progressive in a way, and I said yes, okay, I'm going to do it. And so just 5 weeks later or so, we met at Pat's studio with Tony. We got along super well, and because we were both, like Tony and I were both classically trained, it just was super easy to communicate about music and what we wanted. And it was, we wrote, I don't know, 4 or 5 pieces in like 3 days. It was great. And that became the first EP we ever did. And then just like 4 or 5 months later, we had the first show in the north of Argentina.
Oh, wow.
First show with them.
Amazing.
And I still remember it so well because, and I mean, if you're interested in Tony, like this is a story you need to know. Like he's really not the kind of teacher guy. It's very rare that he does things that sort of like I remember as sort of a lesson,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
But this was great, and it was before the very first show. We were at the venue, and it's a relatively small lobby, relatively small, like big room, right? The lobby, and then just outside of the venue, next door, there was an like a espresso bar, run by like an old lady, like a grandma kind of lady. And so we went there and we had coffee, and Tony said to me, okay, so you see, like we're here now, like nobody knows us. We're nobodies here, right? And then we went back into the venue. It was into the lobby. It was empty. There's nobody here. Said, "Oh, so now look at this. This is the empty lobby." Right? So we went, okay. Then we went to stage, we had sound check, blah, 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 blah. And I didn't really know what he was trying to say, tell me, you know,
Hmm.
after the show, because it was a relatively big show. There were 1,000 people or so there.
Wow.
And so the lobby was so packed and everybody wanted an autograph and wanted to talk to us. And it was amazing. Like, so Tony was the greatest. And I guess the lesson I intended, I don't know if he intended, was you see, like, okay, so like there, it really depends on the context. So like
Yeah.
you're traveling
Yeah.
here, you're nobody, and it's important that you're humble, and this is like you're nobody. And then the situation changes. There's the show. There are other people there, and everything flips, and you're in a very different position. And that was great that he actually took the time and like just to give me that a little bit of an introduction to that. But I remember one mistake I made. I did not have a Sharpie to sign that night.
Ah, okay. Wow.
So, but yeah, that was quite something. But the cool thing about the show was because when you haven't played with people, you never know what is the energy going to be. Like even if you're rehearsing together, you don't know what it's going to feel like on
Yeah.
stage. And with those guys, I wasn't sure if I could bear the energy, the power.
Mm.
I just didn't know, right? And then realizing that I could, that was just the biggest thing for me at that night, to realize, okay, I wasn't far from being great or anything, but to see that I was able to work within that energy context, let's say,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And I remember how like feeling how the timing actually felt on stage, how they with their intuitive knowledge, let's say, know how to mold time, how to hold back, and how to move, how to let the energy explode, and these things. That was just so fascinating, and just to see that I was at the end of the show, I was hopeful that I could keep playing with them, and it
Mm.
worked out. It's been 16 years now.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you stay how do you stay fresh? I know that the last time we spoke, you said like 6, 8 weeks going
Yeah.
out on the road, and I mean that's if I just think about it, I'm like, oh shit, man. And I love playing and everything, but just to be on the road for 6 weeks, like how do you
I
stay
think
fresh mentally and as a musician thinking wise, like on stage?
yes. Like so first of all, like these really long tours, they have become rarer,
Yeah, yeah,
right? So that was like in the early days, because we also played with the double trio with Adrian Belews trio at that
oh yeah,
time, and that's like was the very first long tour, 43 shows or so with that combination. Yeah, it was insane,
that's
but
brutal, man. Wow.
yes, brutal. But no, as I said, I like disciplined practice, right? So in a way, the ability to be on the road for such a long time and to play, say the same set every night, um, is to me like practice.
Mm,
That's how it works for me. So I see it as a practice session, and that's how it stays fresh because
yeah.
every show offers a new, like back then, certainly like a different monitor mix and for sure a different audience, and obviously there's a room in those pieces to improvise and stuff like that. So for me, um, I'm kind of like really curious to see, okay, how does my playing, how does my attention change over the course of a longish tour? And so usually it was around the 17th show, something, where things got really hard.
Mm.
where I wasn't concentrating well anymore, or where the sort of the inner dialogue while I was playing was changing, right? And
Yeah,
it got distracting and blah 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 stuff like that. And then it's just about like dealing with whatever change there is and to kind of like refocus. And that's sort of like what the so that dip sort of like was about to an opportunity to learn what that is, where it comes from, and how to most of all how to counteract it.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah, and that's what like these long tours do. They really um, offer a new learning experience that you can't really get with shorter tours.
yeah,
That's why I'm so grateful. And I think a lot of my resilience and also my ability to simply flick a switch into creative mode, let's say, when I'm in a studio, is because of that. Because I've had these really long tours where I had to really come to terms with my inner beast, let's say. You know,
yeah,
like,
yeah. Makes sense. Yeah.
and you know, like I had also over the years. There's one piece that I've played, I think, at almost all the shows, which is Breathless by Robert Fripp.
Hmm.
It's a nice tune with the middle section is a little bit more difficult because it's a, I can't remember now, 9 over like a 17 or thing. But it's still, it's kind of easy. But it requires a lot of attention, okay? So that piece was always, or it still is like my measuring tool somehow to, okay, what's happening? How do I do, right? What can I hear? What happens mentally when I'm playing the section, the middle
Yeah.
section of Breathless? And there were times when back then we were playing a piece called Firebird Suite, Stravinsky. We did
Hmm.
a arrangement of that. And so I remember that there were moments then where suddenly, while I was playing Breathless, like which required all my concentration, the melody, and not just the melody, also like my imagination of actually playing the Stravinsky piece started happening at the same time in my head.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and then being so alert, let's say, to actually realize, to understand this, and then in the moment to even tell my own brain, let's say, keep quiet. It's okay. We'll play that later, right? Well, yeah. But it's like this kind of experience that only I think you can only have when you're playing many shows.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
And that's also like what makes Tony and Pat such great players because they've always had these
They've
long.
done that. Yeah, yeah,
And Pat told me that he was like when he was a teenager, he was playing these casino gigs where they had like, I don't know what it was, like 6 sets of 90 minutes or
yeah,
something,
yeah. That's insane. Yeah,
crazy stuff,
yeah,
right? And I think it's that kind of what people would say, oh, that's insane and blah blah blah. But for us as how would you call it, players or artists, having this kind of opportunity to really obsess about something is really what makes all the difference.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You need that. I mean, I remember I did like I told you like a 17-day tour, and we had 17 gigs in 17 days, which it's a lot.
Hmm.
With like Bob Moses on drums and Ariel Anderson on bass. So these are guys who are around 80. So
Yes.
they've done a lot of stuff. And I was facing like this crisis around gig 10.
Hmm.
Like for me, everything sounded the same, like as if I'm repeating myself.
Yes.
But then I figure out, yeah, that's how I play. That's my language. But I was just like, oh shit, again, I'm playing this. I didn't even want to play, like enter, like just leaving the guys. And then both those guys, we were drinking wine, and I said that, and they were like, "Yeah, but okay, yesterday we played in Munich. Tomorrow we're gonna play in Erfurt, whatever." And the people in Erfurt tomorrow, they don't know, they haven't seen the show, so they
Yeah,
come with this enthusiasm, and that's the new thing, for them. So,
exactly.
and it's a new audience all the time, and so you have to just, be aware of that. I'm like, shit, yeah, it's people don't know from yesterday or tomorrow, like but someone has to tell you sometimes also these things, and just if you have good musicians, which fortunately we have the fortune that we do have in the bands.
Hmm.
You know, you just listen to them and you react to what they are doing and contributing, and that helps always, right? And but yeah, it's like you said, like, yeah, you learn only if you do this, have a chance to do like a 2 week tour or longer, obviously. And
Yeah, I mean, I just think of it as practice,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
absolutely.
like
Yeah,
if you have some sort of challenge you want to practice, let's just say even like a scale, right?
yeah,
And you do that every day for a month or something. And it's the same, like the scale becomes the show, becomes the scale.
yeah,
And I also like try to put myself into that mind frame to realize, okay, this is not boring, right? So if it gets boring, my mindset is wrong.
yeah,
Right? And then to learn to sort of like adjust to that and to also what I found over the years, it's the direction of intention, direction of energies that makes the performance for me. So and it's difficult to even put that into words. What do I mean when I say direction? It's really like putting the energy right into that thing. And it can be sometimes it's easy, sometimes I have to be a little bit more forceful in order to make sure that that comes out, let's say, right?
yeah,
And so it's the repeated exposure, let's say, to that, which allows for the discovery of a lot of different angles looking at the same material.
yeah,
So
yeah.
and I find it much easier, I have to say, to be on the road for a long time, let's say, rather than having shorter trips, let's say. But it's just my personal
Mm,
preference. For
yeah, yeah.
me, even having 2 days off sometimes
Oh,
really
that's heavy.
out
That's
of
heavy. Yeah, yeah. That's
takes me
like,
out of the flow,
yeah.
and it feels like I have to start over. So that's why with Stickman we try to have, or we always tried to have 6 shows a week.
A week. Yeah.
Yeah. And on this upcoming tour, I think that's going to be the case.
Mm,
It's a
yeah,
short tour. We only have 7 shows, I think. But it's just going to last just about a week. So,
yeah, yeah. Fantastic, man. Yeah, I wanted to ask you one more thing. Like, you're so productive, man. Like, since 2010, I don't know if you're counting how many albums you've done, like as a leader or collaborator or whatever. But like, it's the amount is insane. Like, and also so diverse. Like,
mhm.
you're going from this crazy. I'll, I hate this term, but fusiony type, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
music to a lot of odd meters to free improv stuff to compose stuff. And then on the other side, you have this almost, I've listened to this Stream for Consciousness thing,
yeah,
which is like a meditative, basically
yes.
soundscapes. Like,
Mhm.
where does this come from? All this white interest, and especially this other side, maybe this meditative side. How did you begin doing that
Yeah,
actually?
yeah. That was actually the first thing I did, right? So that was
Ah,
my first album was of that kind, and it comes sort of like from my compositional interests, and also from my interest in permutational and generative composition. So back then I had two loopers in the mid 90s, right?
okay.
So, and the idea was to sort of like train so two things, ear training and also training of my intuition, my musical intuition. So if you have two loops going in different times, consciously it's difficult to predict which note is gonna come
Mm,
next from which of the loopers, right? But intuitively, my subconscious was able to sort of tune into that. And so what I was practicing back then was to sort of understand like the musical spectrum in terms of these dimensions, so time and space like this, or like you could say pitch, low to high. So to intuitively pick up on like where is the space? So where can I put a note in between other notes? So almost like a sort of a hocketing in time and also a
mm,
hocketing in frequencies, right? And that's what I practiced for many years. It
okay.
was part of my daily practice routine to work with two loopers to sort of be able to anticipate the spaces. Yeah, and
Interesting.
that's yeah, and that's what the ambient music comes from. Yeah, because the pieces may sound, I mean, I don't know, like simple or but they are very, very complex because they use this this two looper setup then evolved into a feedback matrix. So
Wow.
the two loopers are sending the output to each other, and so it gets super complex. It's like a very slow building feedback, right? And so working with that, I have developed the ability to, with just a few notes, to compose a really moving piece of music.
Okay.
And it's not that and it's the same for, like you said, like the amount of albums I've put out. It's not that I'm working on, I mean, I am working on music all the time, that's true, but it's not that it's more like I have these nests of time. So like there's my friend Eric is visiting me and we get together for 2 days. And in those 2 days, I record 80 pieces,
Yep.
right? So, and then obviously there's music for
Yep.
3 years to
Yeah,
come out,
yeah, I know what you mean
right?
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
So it's more like I like to focus, like most of the time I'm not focused. I have a hard time focusing, but when I focus,
You're
I get
there. Yeah.
a lot of results, and that's sort of how I work. And also I've had I've been very lucky that early on people came to me and asked me to produce their music. Funnily enough, because of the ambient music.
Mm,
A lot of
interesting.
people that came to me, I heard your album. I'm doing something completely different. Like this lady from Berlin, she said, like I want to make pop songs, but I love your music so much. I need your touch in my music,
Interesting.
and that's how it happened. And yeah, so yeah. I mean, I'm not counting, but even 3 years ago, I remember the number of projects I was involved with was like about 600. But now it's probably 700 or
Wow.
800 even because,
Amazing.
things are, yeah, it's a lot. And I mean, my catalog of compositions is at around 2,000 pieces. So, yeah. And as you say, like there's a lot of
That's
it
amazing, man.
comes
Yeah.
easy, right? Because I sort of improvise it. It's something that happens in the moment. So it's like the 3 minute piece takes 3 minutes to do. Okay. But with other works like the string quartet or
Yeah.
the um, the piece with the symphony orchestra, taught Modern 513, that took a long time to
Oh, yeah.
write.
I can imagine him. Yeah.
So for me, it's always about like what kind of opportunity is here? Like just is there enough time? If there is enough time, if there's even like some sort of budget, let's say, so where I can know I don't have to worry about, making money, then obviously I can spend time
Of
on.
course. Yeah.
But so for me, it's great that I have like this wide range of musical expression available, free improv, um, free ambient music, or even um, like conceptual. Like sometimes I also have I'm writing like tone rows that I'm using, or even for these ambient pieces.
Okay. Interesting.
And but I'm always trying to mix it up because otherwise I get bored too.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. We do so many things just that we don't get bored of.
Yeah,
Musically,
I
I mean,
mean,
that's important to keep you interested. And yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think at this point I would say I either was born or I came on this path and it doesn't make sense for me to try to break it.
Mm. Yeah.
Like even if sometimes I feel like I would like to do something else, or but somehow it feels like it's my duty towards myself somehow to as long as I can, let's say, to create,
Yeah.
because I feel uh, I I don't know, it's hard to what's the point of being alive, let's say, right? And there can be many different points.
Sure.
For me, the point that has presented itself to me over the years is that I should be making music,
Yeah.
you know. And that's the great thing about, like, and I'm not talking about producing records or something like that, but even playing shows. When people tell me that they were moved by by the band or by my playing or whatever. It's such a wonderful,
Yeah,
wonderful thing.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah. And
absolutely.
I don't think that a lot of people sort of like have this kind of get this kind of feedback in life.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And that's also something that I like personally as I go through life. This is something I want to give to people, even if it's not in a musical context, to sort of like be there as somebody who provides feedback, for lack of a better word, you know?
yeah. No, no, I agree. I mean, absolutely. It's a privilege that we do what we do. Also,
I think it
many
is.
times I have to repeat that to myself if I'm complaining internally. I'm like, shit, man, shut up. It's actually, you should be happy what you're doing, and it's really a privilege in a sense. So,
Yeah, I mean,
so that's a nice
it
thing.
is, but it's also hard. So I
Yeah,
want
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
the problem is that once you're in a situation where there is some seeming success, like, but to understand that that's not the case. I mean,
Yeah.
most musicians, most people that are known, and I'm not talking about the huge stars, obviously, but most people who are even known for what they do, they're struggling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's why artists are, in general, I think it's more sensitivity we have, I guess, to other factors as well. And in some kind of internal struggle, sounds bad, but you know what I mean. It's like you invest so much time and energy into what we're doing. So it's like, it makes sense that you're fighting some sort of demons,
Yeah, of course.
So
And
it's,
yeah,
yeah.
like I think everybody does,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
It's just that for us, let's say there is an outlet that is actually
Yes.
visible or, in some way, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And like I'm sometimes thinking about like the poor guys who are comedians, like artists that are comedians, right? Because that's clearly an art,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
So and they sort of like play this role like on stage, right? Which is like with some exceptions where people can be like so sarcastic, let's say, that you can really see how they really feel. But being a comedian must be like the worst thing in the world. A clown.
Yeah, yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's heavy. That'll be the quote now, like, the worst thing in the world. Like Louis C.K. or someone will hear that and will like quote you. But yeah, no, 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 I hear you. Uh, but Marcus, what's still on the schedule for you for this year? Like, I know you have this tour coming up, and what are some other things you're involved in the upcoming months? And
I mean, fortunately, it's relatively open. Um, I'm waiting for a new visa for the US
okay,
for the summer because there may be two tours in the summer with Tuner and Stickman in the US, right? And no, I'm sort of like focusing on teaching touch guitar. It's the 20th anniversary of my touch guitar circle this year.
beautiful.
So I'm in May. There's going to be a course in the US and more activities in the year. I'm actually even making like um, a series of 10 instruments as sort of to celebrate the 20th anniversary.
Mm,
And yeah, so I mean, my focus really is on that this year.
beautiful.
And I'm opening up my offers also for people who are not playing touch guitar, so like more general music lessons. Plus, I'm doing like an ear training course and stuff like that. So that's what I want to focus on because you're absolutely right with like producing so much music. It's really really difficult because like what we do, what most musicians do is set for a niche, for a small
Yeah, yeah,
audience.
absolutely.
And so like there's always like this problem like how much do you actually produce or how much do you offer, how much do you actually release versus what is too much for people, and sometimes I really like in most cases I can't think about the audience, I just need to do the work.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm the same. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and it's really I know some people criticize me for that, that there's so much output, but what should I do? Should I just not do
No,
it?
yeah.
Doesn't
Nowadays you can do that. the technology and everything allows us to do that. So yeah, absolutely.
So I don't really know what this year will bring. On top of the the teaching focus, hopefully the tours can happen in the summer. And like I've also been working on a book about the touch guitar technique.
Oh, fantastic.
So
yeah, we're probably gonna do together like a 40-hour session duo. So we have
yes,
to then then we need like 7 albums from that.
yeah, exactly. I think that's what's going to happen. I mean, somehow something like that is going to happen. No, I have a few more musical projects that are already in motion that will
Fantastic.
Come out this year, and beyond that, I have no idea.
Fantastic, man. Beautiful. Well, Markus.
Yeah, thank you, Samo.
Yeah, if like I said the other day, we have a guest room here, and if you like white wine, just come over and we'll hang. And
white wine, yeah, is okay.
it's okay, and good food. So yeah, that's what it's all about. So thanks, man, for sharing some of these thoughts. Appreciate it.
Of course.
And,
thank you for everything.
Yeah. And
Dr. Jazz.